Hello, and welcome to Go Fund This, a podcast from Nerd's Domain. In these episodes, we'll be talking to crowdfund project managers about their projects and what excites them. Come listen as we talk about the passion they have for their project.
Hello, and welcome to this joint release of Tome Travelers from Passionerdly and Go Fund This from the Nerd's Domain. Today, I am very excited to have Craig Campbell on the show to talk about his award-winning RPG, CAPERS, and his game studio, NerdBurger Games. I'm even more excited to help officially announce a follow-up to the game CAPERS with CAPERS Noir, which is kickstarting on March 12th. The original CAPERS RPG is set in the 1920s, Prohibition era of the United States. Players portray exceptional people called CAPERS by the general populace, but who have been gifted with superhuman powers that defy the laws of science. You can even play a gangster working to make his fortune in the vice-riddled 1920s. Alternatively, you can play a member of law enforcement working to bring these criminals to justice. Now, with the follow-up supplement, the game moves into the 1940s in the United States. World War II has wrought such destruction that the veil between this world and the world of the dead has thinned. Monsters have crept in. You are a criminal or a cop in a noir landscape of crime, corruption, red eyes in the shadows, and bumps in the night. And you have superpowers. So for a special drive-through RPG link, please be sure to check out our show notes or go to the website passionerdly.com. So, Craig, one of the questions that I always love asking a game trader is how they got into RPG gaming, as most started off as gamers themselves.
My first game was a Ravenloft game, AD&D 2nd edition, that took place in May of 1991. That was the second semester, spring semester of my first year at college. Happened right before I went home. I played a little bit of Ravenloft with some friends that I had made at college. And then that summer, I just kind of absorbed and really got into the game. I bought the 3 core books for D&D 2nd edition. Didn't have anybody to play with, but I absorbed everything in the books. And went back to college that sophomore year and played, like crazy. And then junior year, we played even more. If we weren't going to classes, we were playing. And yeah, that's kind of where it started. It was all downhill from there. So it's been, going on 30 years that I've been playing. So it's been a lot of fun. I still love playing. I try to play as much as I can. But unfortunately, I end up having to GM a lot more just because I have to playtest my own stuff.
You've also been involved in game design as a freelance writer for years now. What are some of your favorite projects you've created to date?
I think the favorite project was, certainly the most challenging project, was I wrote an adventure for Dungeon Magazine back in 2011 or so, I think. It was called Baba Yaga's Dancing Hut. And it was a reimagining of a module from an earlier edition, I think from first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons around that time. And it was taking that module that had been published in the magazine and reimagining it for 4th edition. So there was a fair bit of kind of reworking what was in there, but then there was a lot of brand new stuff because 4th edition is a very different game than those earlier versions of D&D. That was a huge project. That was like 30,000 words. It was a very long adventure. It's one of the longest adventures they've published in Dungeon Magazine. And I'm very proud of that one. That was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, but it was challenging and it was a lot of fun. Some of the favorite, just the stuff that I'm kind of tickled about was that they didn't do a lot of support material for Gamma World outside of the 3 box sets during the 4th edition era at D&D with D&D. You remember they did a Gamma World thing for a few box sets that kind of created Gamma World in the 4th edition world, and I did a few articles for the website that helped to expand some of that. I did an article called Hometown Gamma Terra, I think it was called, which was just guidelines to creating a Gamma Terra location out of your hometown or any other location, a way to kind of turn a real-world location into a wacky location for Gamma World adventures. And then I co-wrote an article called Pedal to the Metal with a friend of mine because, strangely enough, Gamma World didn't have rules for vehicles. They had some basic rules for having mounts, and they had, all the other basic rules, but they didn't have any rules for vehicles. So we wrote a thing called Pedal to the Metal that was all about creating like Mad Max style death machines, and souping up and having chases, and augmenting your rides, and a random table for crashes and what happens when you crash your vehicle. And that was a lot of fun too. Those are the ones that kind of stick out the most outside of my own stuff. I only occasionally freelance now for other companies, but I still enjoy it. It's nice to take a ride around in somebody else's game, in somebody else's universe, so I like doing that once in a while, but I don't get to do it very often.
I'm a proud supporter of the IGDN. That's the Independent Game Designer Network for our listeners, having discovered so many amazing creators and games through it. When did you join, and how has it helped you?
I joined the IGDN just a couple of years ago, 2 years ago. It's been a great experience. I've had a lot of fun. I've got to know a lot of other game designers, just become friends in general, play some games, learn a great deal about game design. It's one of those organizations that has a very broad membership in terms of there's some people that are making their living full-time as indie game designers, and then there are other people that are more like hobbyists like me, so they're just kind of doing things in their free time. So it's a broad spectrum of a lot of experience, and so I've learned quite a bit about how to kind of make a lot of different little things happen on my own in my free time, because I do all of this by myself. I mean, I freelance, I contract people in, but the NerdBurger Games is basically me. There's no other permanent employee. The IGDN has helped me get my games into conventions, helped me find resources, like put me in touch with people that do layout and editing and things like that. It's been a great time, and I enjoy being a part of it. I try to be as active as I can, although sometimes I'm not able to be quite as active as I'd like because I'm bogged down in other things. But definitely money and time well spent.
I really love hearing from fellow podcasters on Passionerdly.com. Tell us a little bit about your podcast and what brought you into this medium of expression.
The NerdBurger Podcast. That came into being before I really got going on the game side, the game design thing, outside of freelancing. I hadn't really designed my own game. It's about 6 years ago. I was talking to my friend Mike, and we were like, we should do something fun. We kind of toyed around like with the idea of making a podcast, and it was kind of a half-baked, like we're just going to talk about this. It's never really going to happen. And then he made the mistake of saying, I'll do all the technical stuff. You just show up and be funny. So I said, I'm in. And we've been doing the podcast for about 6 years now. It's like really weird that it's been that long. It's called The NerdBurger Show, nerdburgershow.com. It's really just like a potpourri discussion every week of various geeky topics. We talk about recent stuff in the news. We sometimes talk about our own personal stuff and stuff that isn't quite so geeky nerdy. We have a rotating group of guests that comes on, mostly friends of ours. Although we bring on special guests, one-shot, two-shot kind of guests every now and then too, and just geek out about whatever it is that's on our minds at the time. And it's been going on for, like I said, 6 years. Every single Wednesday there's a new episode that goes up. We have not missed a single week in that entire time, and now I expect that it will probably go until one of us dies, because neither one of us wants to be the guy that killed the consistent every single week for 6 years podcast. So who knows how much longer this will go, but we're having a lot of fun doing it. Occasionally I get to talk about NerdBurger game stuff on there too, but I try to not do that too much. We just talk about all sorts of things.
I really love the superhero genre. It's probably one of my top two styles of RPGs that I run. Recently, we are seeing a really strong resurgence in the fan following of this genre with games like Masks: A New Beginning and the development for Mutants and Masterminds under Crystal Frazier and Green Ronin. What would you say really makes your game stand out in the superhero genre of RPGs?
Superheroes. Supervillains. CAPERS is, at its heart, a gangster game where the gangsters happen to have superpowers. And that was a discovery that I made while designing it. I actually went into the game kind of thinking of it in terms of being a supers game, although not a traditional superhero game, because you're often playing gangsters and they're kind of anti-heroes. So although you can play law enforcement characters and be heroic, uphold the law and do the good thing. But it kind of partway through designing the game and getting feedback, I realized, no, this isn't really a supers game. It's really a gangsters game set in the 1920s, and there happened to be superpowers. So that informed a lot of decision making on it, and I think that's probably what sets it apart from a lot of other supers games, is that it's in a different era than we normally see supers games set, and it's not really a capes and cowls, good guy, bad guy, superhero, supervillain kind of game. It's more of a game about people involved in crime and law enforcement on a more mundane level who happen to have some cool abilities. So it's very niche, but it has found its audience, and I'm thankful for that.
I always love asking RPG writers this question. If you could be anyone or anything in the universe of the game you've created, where would you see yourself?
Oh boy. That's a little tough to answer without sounding like a bad person, because most of my games are about, let's go through them. Murders and Acquisitions is about greedy people trying to stab their way up the corporate ladder. Capers is about gangsters, so criminals. And Die Laughing is about people that are going to die very soon. So yeah, really, I had none of those three. Although with Capers you can play law enforcement characters, so I suppose the safe answer is I'd be a Fed with maybe some super strength to be able to beat up the criminals, and then something weird that I like, prehensile tongue or maybe organ shifting. Something that I could show off at parties and do something weird and be a conversation piece. That could be fun.
One of the things that I really enjoyed when I was looking through your system was the mechanic system of using a standard card deck. I was wondering what inspired you to move away from dice and look into this as your method of chance and determination.
The playing card mechanic for Capers mostly came out of wanting to challenge myself, because I had done Murders and Acquisitions, which used a dice system, and I wasn't really interested in using any licensed system that was out there. I briefly toyed with the idea of adapting the dice system that I developed for Murders and Acquisitions into Capers, and just maybe playing with that and modifying that, allowing that to grow into something different. But I remember just being can I do something interesting that's a little different that will challenge me, because that's always fun. And one of my favorite games is Deadlands, and the original game Deadlands used poker cards, playing cards, to a pretty good effect. They used it for a lot of different parts of the rules. There were still dice, but you used playing cards in a number of different aspects of the game. And Savage Worlds still uses playing cards a bit, and there are other games that are mostly not terribly well known, but there's a few out there that use playing cards, and I thought that was interesting. And thematically it fit Capers, because you are dealing with gangsters in the 1920s and illegal gambling establishments and things like that, in addition to prohibition. So it kind of fit that the playing card mechanic was kind of made sense for that. And so I just kind of started tinkering with different ideas about mechanics. Eventually, hit on the idea of flipping subsequent cards and having sort of a press your luck little gambling game, where each of your trait checks or power checks is like a little bit of a gamble to see whether you can succeed or maybe push your luck too far and fail. It just kind of grew from there. It had legs. The first time I play tested it, people were like, "Hey, this is kind of cool," and so I ran with it, and eventually it became kind of the signature of the game. It's been very well received. People seem to really enjoy the mechanic and the uniqueness, the flavor of the whole thing. So I'm looking to actually continue to develop the playing card mechanic, that core mechanic, which I'm calling Capers Core, and maybe do another game using that same mechanic, but kind of expanding some subsets of rules and finding, exploring the playing card thing a little bit more and seeing what I can find, what I can do with it. There's a lot of versatility in there, and I'm having fun with that.
Looking through your catalog, I've really loved the art direction that your games have taken on, especially Capers. So what drew you towards this style, and how did you end up working with your current illustrator, Beth Varney?
The artwork for Capers is done, the entire book is done by Beth Varney, who I discovered back when I was looking to do mergers and acquisitions, and I put out a call on like freelancer.com and upworks.com, some of those types of sites. And I got a bunch of artists, and I involved several artists in that first game, and Beth was one of them. And she really stood out in that she was also a gamer, and she was very excited and interested in being involved in an RPG project. And as it turns out, her bread and butter is in indie comics. She does a lot of indie comic work, and you can see that certainly in her art style. When Capers came around and I was looking for artwork for that, I thought, well, let's see if Beth can do the whole book, because that's a lot of work. It'll be spread out over different times, and she was. And we negotiated all that out, and the work got done in chunks, and I've been very happy with it. I mean, my art direction is relatively straightforward. I just describe the basics of what's in there, in the scene, and really let Beth kind of make it her own as much as possible. Occasionally, I get really picky about something, like usually the front cover. We spent a lot of time going back and forth on the front cover, but a lot of the artwork, it's her envisioning this game world that I've come up with, and she makes good choices because she knows her way around stuff. The artwork is a comic book style, which is appropriate, I think, for a game set in kind of, first of all, a Supers game, and then also a game set in like the earliest days of comic books. So, she made a lot of great color choices. The colors tend to be a little more muted, but with some good accents and things. There's different spots in each illustration that really pop and bring the illustration alive. I've been very happy with it, and I love working with Beth. She's a joy to work with. She knows her stuff. We trust each other, and I've used her quite a bit on my projects, and hope to continue to use her in the future a fair bit.
You've also developed some great add-ons for the Capers system, such as Moxie cards and playing cards, as well as a series of adventures to get players into the game. What can you tell us about these?
I kind of went a little nuts with the support materials for Capers. I did a lot of the stuff that I had done previously for mergers and acquisitions, some adventures, a rules one sheet, pages that you can slip into a GM screen for people who like to have that, a couple of other little things. But then, obviously, the playing card thing made sense. To, like, Drive-Thru Cards does a pretty good quality deck of playing cards. So it made it very easy for me to do print-on-demand cards for that. So that was kind of a no-brainer. The Moxie cards came out of me running out of stretch goal ideas and figuring, hey, why not make more work for myself and get another deck of cards. And the Moxie cards are optional. You don't need them for the game, but they give you additional options for how to spend Moxie when you're playing Capers. And Moxie is a resource that goes up and down. You spend points, you gain points to give your character bonuses and do cool things. So that kind of came out of that. And let's see, what else was there? There was like the maps and minis that came out of the latter days of the Kickstarter, where I had gone through all of the previous stretch goals, and the Kickstarter was doing very well, so there was money coming in. I was like, I can get Owen to do some maps and Beth to draw some minis, some little tiny person illustrations, and make maps and minis for people who like to have maps and minis on the table. So, I decided, let's make this the complete package. I've got the time, I've got the resources and the people that can help me do it. So it kind of just blew up from there. I don't know that I will ever do this again with a game. It got to be a lot of extra work, but it certainly has helped to make the Capers, the Capers Kickstarter rewards process pretty cool, because you got a whole bunch of stuff. After the fact, it provides a little bit of a revenue stream because people continue to purchase the little things as well as the book, which is nice.
Of course, I have to do a shameless plug time. If our listeners and followers wanted to track down your games and follow your studio, where would you recommend they go?
Shameless plug! Well, you can find the games themselves at drivethrurpg.com. PDF versions, hardcover, softcover, all that stuff. You can go to NerdBurgerGames.com to learn about stuff. I blog there as much as I'm able. Sometimes it's a little slow, sometimes it's a little more active. It all just kind of ebbs and flows depending on how much I have to do. You can listen to the podcast by going to NerdBurgerShow.com. You can follow me on Twitter at NerdBurgerCraig, and that's a good way to kind of actually engage with me. I keep up to speed on the Twitter quite a bit, and try to, if you say something to me and ask a question or anything like that, I try to respond. Also, at nerdburgergames.com, there's a contact page that has links to all of these things, including an invite for the Discord. And the Discord just started a little while ago. It's it's 100 and some people, and it's a nice little community. And we talk about the game stuff and whatnot that I'm working on, but we also talk about other things. And so it's I've really enjoyed getting that going, and I try to stay right on top of that too. So that's a good way to get in touch and learn about things. And that's the place where I will probably do most of my announcements when I'm looking for playtesters. So if that's your bag, you definitely want to get on the Discord.
And of course, thank you so much for agreeing to this interview. I am a huge fan, and I really want to say congratulations on your Banfies Award. It has been an absolute honor and blast having you.
Thank you so much for interviewing me, for talking. This has been really cool. I'm glad to get a chance to meet you and know you a little bit, and hopefully reach out to your audience and introduce people to some interesting little games by a guy who just works on things in his free time. Thanks.
All right, guys. Well, that is it for us tonight. I hope that you enjoyed the show, and be sure to check us out at Passionerdly.com. Follow us on our social media, and go check out Craig Campbell and his company at NerdBurgerGames.com. Bye, guys.
Hello, and welcome to Go Fund This, a podcast from Nerds Domain. In these episodes, we'll be talking to crowdfund project managers about their projects and what excites them. Come listen as we talk about the passion they have for their project.